Welcome to Crossroads. In today's episode, we'll be talking about how the decision on Trump's presidential immunity, how it could have a real sweeping impact on all the other charges, the Jan 6 cases, and possibly even on some former presidents. Also, there's a campaign right now that could remove Joe Biden from the ballot using, guess what? Well, the 25th Amendment, mental fitness. We'll be going into all this. First, Special Counsel Jack Smith wants the D.C. Appeals Court to not hear of any motions and to drop any decisions on whether President Donald Trump had presidential immunity for the January 6 case. And this could actually have a sweeping impact not only on the many criminal charges against Trump, but also on potential future charges against President Joe Biden and many other former presidents. This is currently going to the U.S. Appeals Court in D.C., and oral arguments on the case, while they're set for January 9th, meaning this is all moving through right now. It seems like regardless of this, the appeals court decision with all that, it's either going to lose, either losing side, really in this case, is going to try to bring the case to the Supreme Court. And so it looks like this all going to the Supreme Court is inevitable at this point. Now, first off, let me show you Special Counsel Jack Smith's claim. Here's what he wrote in the filing. He said this: "For the first time in our nation's history, a grand jury has charged a former president," it's his grand jury, by the way, has charged a former president with committing crimes while in office to overturn an election that he lost. In response, the defendant claims that to protect the institution of the presidency, he must be cloaked with absolute immunity from criminal prosecution unless the House impeached and the Senate convicted him for the same conduct. He is wrong, according to Jack Smith. Jack Smith says separation of power principles, constitutional text, history, and precedent all make clear that a former president may be prosecuted for criminal acts he commits while in office, including, most critically here, illegal acts to remain in power despite losing an election." Now, look, all this is debatable. Personally, I'd say a lot of what Smith said in there isn't totally true, but of course, the Supreme Court's going to be the one to decide all this, and appeals courts before that. Smith has been saying basically that presidential immunity is more just on civil matters and does not apply to more serious crimes. That's the general suggestion. And he's suggesting, of course, that, it's not just for the Senate to hear, it's not just for the Supreme Court to hear, and so on like that. He's saying that even, a grand jury brought by a special counsel like him could just make this kind of determination. Now, personally, I'd say if this were the case, if a president was just, only had immunity when it came to civil matters, then a president's ability to pardon criminals would also be limited to just civil matters and not to more serious crimes like Smith suggests. And remember, you had like Obama pardoning major criminals, including terrorists who killed police officers like the Weather Underground. Now, Trump has been challenging the disputes on his presidential immunity. I'll be talking more about this and the deeper implications of what it means if he doesn't have immunity, especially to Biden. I'll also be giving updates on the Trump ballot disqualification case in Maine and the campaign to remove Biden from the ballot using the 25th Amendment. But all this is going to be after the jump to Epoch TV. Now, Trump has been challenging the disputes on his presidential immunity. And Trump is also noting the deeper implications of what it means if he does not have immunity. Let me show you this and we'll talk about it a bit. Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social, he said, "Remember, if I don't have presidential immunity, then crooked Joe Biden doesn't have it either. And he would certainly be prosecuted for his many actual crimes, including illegally receiving massive amounts of money from foreign countries, including China, Ukraine, and Russia, paying off Ukraine to fire an unfriendly prosecutor, allowing millions of people to illegally enter and destroy our country, surrendering in Afghanistan with hundreds dead, many Americans left behind, and handing over billions of dollars worth of the best military equipment anywhere on earth, the decimation of American wealth through the Great News scam, and much more. Remember, crooked Joe Biden and his corrupt Justice Department, DAs and AGs, has attacked his political opponent at a level never seen before in this country and wants desperately to put Trump in prison. He is playing a very dangerous game, and the great people of America will not stand for it. Make America great again. Now, digging into some of these things, basically, Trump has been, saying that, he did have presidential immunity, that it's not for, Jack Smith to determine. And Jack Smith, of course, brought a grand jury, which he kept in Washington to bring charges in other states, which is questionably legal in and of itself. Jack Smith also did not make his oath to office within a reasonable time period, suggesting none of what he did could be possibly legal in the beginning. And also, Jack Smith was not a private citizen when he was appointed to become special counsel, which also possibly violates the standards of appointing a special counsel. Meaning, there's a lot of different hurdles that Smith is going to have when it comes to this, especially if he goes to the Supreme Court. And Trump is actually challenging all of these things. And also remember, when Trump is bringing up the implications of what it means to have presidential immunity, if the Supreme Court determines that presidents do not have broad and sweeping immunity, that yes, they can be charged with crimes, actually the stuff Trump brings up could have serious implications for Biden. And we could even say that even Barack Obama before him, maybe even Bill Clinton and others, maybe even George Bush could be charged with crimes. We'll have to see. Now, Trump is bringing up a few pretty big things here. He's talking about how Biden illegally received massive amounts of money from foreign countries, China, Ukraine, Russia. There is evidence of that. Of course, House Republicans are bringing a lot of this forward. The question is, how much was he actually involved in the dealings of Hunter Biden? I do think the documents coming out now suggest that, well, Biden was at the very least involved with it. They're saying he was not financially involved, suggesting he was not getting money from it. But without a doubt, he was playing some role. Keep in mind, they could go after that criminally, even if he was not directly financially involved. That's the way that mafia cases typically work. The mob boss, if you go after a mafia, the mob boss typically keeps out of the dirty work. The mob boss typically does not get involved in on-the-ground work. Crime families, this is how they work. And that's why you have things like RICO, racketeering and so on. And it is possible they could go after Joe Biden using RICO, even if he's not, financially involved in the, alleged crimes of Hunter Biden. We do know he was involved to an extent, and yes, based on RICO, that could be enough to go after him. Trump mentions that Biden paid off Ukraine to fire an unfriendly prosecutor. That's where Biden went on video, by the way, and says that, he got this prosecutor fired who notably was looking into Burisma, the company which Hunter Biden was working for, looking into corruption, which, yes, could have gone after Hunter Biden. That is an actual case, very likely, of quid pro quo. And Joe Biden admitted it on video, in fact. Trump mentions that Biden allowed millions of people to illegally enter and destroy our country. That is the case. Joe Biden has been destroying the border. He's been destroying border security, even going after Texas for trying to secure the border, even trying to make it, including Biden's administration, so that Texas cannot put up barriers, and they're trying to make Texas tear down the barriers it has installed. Now, one of the sole roles of the government is to, of course, secure the borders of the federal government, is to secure the nation's borders. At the very least, the federal government is delinquent on its responsibilities. But as this mass invasion of the country is happening, hundreds of thousands of people every single month, you have states of emergencies being issued all across the United States. You have states having to foot the bill for illegal aliens, not just in terms of housing them and feeding them, but even providing, of course, medical care, which is destroying the basic livelihood of many American citizens. Now, this is, I would say, is beyond just a border security issue. It's also allowing criminals to commit crimes in America, allowing American citizens to be killed by non-citizens, not properly enforcing the laws, and a whole lot of other things that could even be deemed crimes against humanity if you want to take it to that level.